Hey yo broskis, welcome to this video. I am doing a patch 9.2 rundown here. This is a new series that I'm going to do, and I'm basically gonna do patch rundowns for each patch coming out throughout season 9. Keep in mind that for this video I have seen both Ella's and Phreak's patch rundowns, so I will take their thoughts into consideration. And I have a SoloQ point of view. I know that both Phreak and Ella's has a competitive and SoloQ point of view. I'll only focus on the SoloQ point of view because that's the only thing that I can relate to, since I am a SoloQ player, even though I have played competitively beforehand. And I'm basically gonna split the buffs and nerfs up to two categories, which is basically depending on your elo. I am gonna split it up in low and high elo. High elo being diamond and above, and low elo being platinum and below. So let's just jump into patch 9.2 notes. And Sylas coming out. Sylas most likely gonna be a permaban champion. From what I've seen previously of new release champions, they always seem to be overtuned, and that's because new champions are always difficult to balance out. My personal opinion about Sylas is that Sylas is gonna be really tough to balance out. Either he's gonna be way too strong because of the numbers, or he's gonna be way too weak because of the numbers simply not being good enough, so he will simply be essentially useless. And I think that the recent kits that Riot Games have released, they are fun, they're cool, but they just don't fit in ranked, and they're, in my opinion, unhealthy for SoloQ. But I can recommend Sylas to be a ban-worthy pick. If you don't want to ban him, at least look at his ability so you know how to counter him. But yeah. First champion nerf, Aatrox. The Q damage ratio decreased and the E recharge time increased. So in SoloQ, Aatrox has really been dominating both mid and top. He's been a top tier pick the last two patches, I think so. And he's essentially getting a nerf on his total attack damage ratios. Beforehand it was scaling from 0.64 till 0.80. Now to 0.55 to 0.75. So losing out on total attack damage. And the full combo base damage is unchanged. The full combo ratios have been overall nerfed as well. Beforehand it was 3.6 to 4.5, now it's 3.09 to 4.22. So overall he deals less damage, he has lower ratios, and I think this is a fair nerf to his Q. His E is essentially getting 2 extra seconds of cooldown, so you'll be actually able to kill Aatrox. Eventually have better gank time windows for him. This nerf. Aurelion Sol. So Aurelion Sol is not really seen so much in SoloQ. It's either one tricks or randomly picking up Aurelion Sol players that play this champion. But the minimum recast time has basically been lowered from beforehand being 0.65 to 0.25, which is basically a buff for melee matchups for Aurelion Sol, especially assassins. Beforehand, assassins could really easily jump on Aurelion Sol without Aurelion Sol being able to do anything, except if Aurelion Sol had ulti. Now Aurelion Sol can actually counter them by doing double tap Q and stun them. The duration is not as long, but it's still better than beforehand where you can do essentially anything. And then if the Q travels more than for 5 seconds, the stun duration is basically increased to 1.65 up until 2.25 depending on how many ranks you have in your Q. Brand. Brand is one of the stronger AP supporters down in bot lane. I haven't really seen Brand too much mid lane, so this is mainly gonna be for Brand support that I'm gonna talk about. And it's essentially just that his passive is losing 1% of target's max health over 4 seconds. Before it was 4, now it's 3, so it's a 25% cut. And I feel like this is a fair nerf because most AD carries and even supports don't have that many. They don't have that much base MR, and their MR scaling is also low. So Brand and in general AP supporters are dealing a huge amount of damage, and they can actually like almost 1v2 in lane by using their combo and blow someone up. And they don't even have to focus anyone, except if it's a tank support, then of course they'll have to do it on the AD carry. But if it's a squishy support, then you can also one-shot supports fairly easily. So definitely a fair nerf to Brand as well. I don't think it's gonna do too much regarding Brand support. I think Brand support will still be played. I haven't seen Brand mid, so I'm mainly gonna say that it's gonna affect Brand support because a Brand gets picked more in support than mid lane, but also that AP Brand is mainly played in mid, whereas like over time high DPS Brand with Leandris and more kind of health and AP Brand is being played as a support, so you can compensate this by building full AP, but that's mainly seen in mid lane. Whereas as a support, you also need like your support items, which also provides HP, but also lower AP ratios than mid lane items. Casio, W cooldown increased late, damage decreased late. So Casio is an insane hybrid carry AP mid laner. Has also recently been seen played in bot lane as an ADC or an AP carry for bot lane. And the W cooldown is essentially going to be from 18, beforehand being 18 to 14 seconds, to now being 18 to 16. So the W will have 2 seconds longer cooldown in later ranks. And the damage per second beforehand was 20 to 80, now it's 20 to 60. So also 20 damage cut late game per second. And the max damage beforehand was 100 to 400, now 100 to 300. So in later ranks, all over the page, the W is just gonna be weaker. I think this is a fair nerf. Casio has been really strong, and she is still gonna be strong late game, and she's still viable for late game, and she can still be picked in both bot and mid lane. So you can still pick up Casio, but keep in mind that your W will have a higher cooldown and your damage output will be lower. But other than that, I think Casio is still in a somewhat good spot. Galio, the #1 mid laner and almost even top laner for I don't even know how long since he got buffed. He's finally getting nerfed, which is totally deserved. Galio was the most broken mid laner for SoloQ. Highest win rate, really high pick rate, insanely high ban rate as well. So there's nothing even to like discuss here. Totally deserved nerf. Basically what's gonna happen is that the Q damage is being decreased, the mana cost for the Q is being increased, and the E damage is decreased in the early game. So the Q is essentially gonna cost more mana from rank 1 till rank 5. It's getting 10 to 30 mana increase, which makes the mana sustain for Galio in lane less, so you have to back more often or use his Q more wisely in terms of wave clearing. The Wine Blast Q damage is being lowered before 70 to 230, now to 70 to 210, so a 20 damage cut in later ranks. The AP ratios for the Q is beforehand 0.9 AP to now 0.75, so a 15 damage percent cut there as well. The tornado ratio damage, beforehand dealing 4% of target's max health per 100 ability, is now being lowered to half, 2% of their max health per 100 ability power. And then we have the E as well being lowered in damage early game, scaling from 100 to 220 to 80 to 220. So this basically makes sure that you're not getting one-shot by Galio at level 3 if you're a squishy player, simply by the EQW or EWQ into passive auto attack. And essentially Galio will not be as strong throughout the entire game. You'll have to build more AP for you to get one shot by him, and yeah, if he needs to one shot you, he needs to either like change his keystone from Aftershock to something else, which is most likely not gonna happen, or he just needs to get more ahead and get more items before he can do that. So a totally deserved nerf for Galio. I still think Galio will be a great mid laner, don't get me wrong, but Galio was just way too oppressive, and I permabanned him like every single game the past 2 patches because he was simply too strong. But now he's finally getting nerfed, and that's totally deserved. And yeah, I'm genuinely happy about this change right here. I think they did a reasonably big nerf to Galio, but it was also needed, so I'm quite happy for this. Aurelia, passive bonus damage versus shields are removed. The Q deals bonus damage to minions instead of double damage. The R duration is decreased later on, and the damage is increased from ulti, and the slow is increased, but is no longer gonna disarm people. So first up, her passive Shield Breaker. Aurelia no longer deals bonus damage to shields at max stacks. That basically means that Ardent supports or shield champions are indirectly getting buffed. Before, Aurelia was one of the champions who could deal with some Ardent sensor supports, because she would cut through the shield, which basically made sure that they would have to peel even more for Aurelia to keep them off their carries, essentially. The Q beforehand dealt double damage to minions is now gonna deal a flat bonus damage, so it's gonna deal 45 to 105. This looks like it's overall gonna be a nerf, especially later on Q ranks, maybe not early ranks, but later ranks. Looks like it's gonna be a nerf, so maybe I would say maybe like level 1, 2, and no, level 1, 3, 4. I think it might be a buff, but later on in laning phase it's gonna be a nerf, and it's gonna be a nerf for all the game. You max this ability first. And then we have the ulti, which is gonna be lower the duration. It's beforehand scaling from 2.5 to 3.5. It's now gonna be 2.5 for all ranks. It no longer disarms people, but it is instead gonna slow the players that you hit more if they walk through the wall. Essentially just like the fresh bugs. And the wall damage have been increased. So you're gonna deal more damage, but now 80 carries and other carries like 80 champions especially can go through the wall. They're just gonna take more damage, but they are also able to counter it by attacking back with the auto attacks. So fair nerf for Aurelia. Aurelia was still really strong. I think she might be a bit too weak because of all these nerfs combined, but we'll see. Jarvan, attack speed E increased, beforehand going from 15 to 25%, now going from 20 to 30%. This is not gonna do anything for Jarvan. Jarvan jungle just doesn't really fit. He fits okay, like somewhat in the meta, but against the meta champions, he's just not able to like kill them, because most of the meta champions are either high mobility with dashes, who can dodge Jarvan's EQ combo, or they just have straight up better hits who can deal more damage, or just fits better at like 1v1 fighting. So this is not gonna do anything for Jarvan. If you're thinking about playing Jarvan top lane, this is not gonna do anything either. The only reason why you would pick Jarvan top lane is for the EQ auto traits with passive, and you don't really like need the attack speed from your E for top lane Jarvan to be played. So Jarvan still in a weak spot. I don't think he'll be in the meta. I don't think he can do anything against the current jungle meta. And for top lane, it's not gonna do anything either. So kinda irrelevant. Buff. Don't really see why they did this. But hey, it is Riot Games after all that we're talking about. Jax, attack damage decreased, Q damage decreased early. So he's losing 2 base AD and he's losing out 15 base damage early game. He's just straight up losing 15 base damage. So Jax has been a really strong top laner and a really strong jungler. I do recommend Jax to be played more in top than in jungle, but he can also be played in jungle just fine. He can also be, yeah, he's like somewhat a flex pick for top and jungle, but I think top lane is better than jungle personally. But jungle Jax is still viable. He's using 2 base AD, and then early on his trade potential is just overall weaker. It doesn't really touch his late game. It's just the fact that you have more counter potential to essentially kill him in the early game and make him weaker and like stall him from getting his late game power spikes. So nerfing his early game because his late game is really strong. Seems fair to me. So small nerf. I don't think it's gonna do anything. You can still pick Jax. He's not really getting touched by this. He still has a really good late game. So if you need a late game top lane split pusher or jungler, then Jax will be just fine still at doing that job. Kassadin, armor decrease. Base armor getting nerfed from 23 to 19, and armor growth getting lowered from 3.2 to 2.8. This basically means that 80 mid laners will have an easy time getting a solo kill on Kassadin, especially in the early game. It will most likely be Set and Talon, from what I can remember in the top of my head, for 80 mid laners. Kassadin has been really strong. He's still strong for SoloQ. Like as soon as Kassadin hits 6, like the game is actually over. You're actually gonna lose. So nerfing his laning phase, especially against AD champions, seems just fine. This is a small nerf, so it's mainly gonna affect like the AD matchups for Kassadin. But it doesn't affect it too much, I don't think. He's still gonna be just fine against AP champions. Keep in mind that AP champions will deal more damage with auto attacks. So yeah, overall he's just having a weaker laning phase. But it's nothing too insane, and I think Kassadin will still be just fine. He can still hybrid carry late game as soon as he hits 16. And he hits his item power spikes, so Kassadin is still a really good pick for SoloQ. Then we have Kayn. I was actually looking for this, for these changes. And basically what it means is that instead of like reading all of this, you can read it for yourself. I'm gonna link the patch notes down below. But it's essentially gonna mean that it doesn't really matter who you're killing. It doesn't limit you to killing either ranged champions or melee champions, because essentially you'll get more points per champion, so you'll get your form overall faster. But if you wanna like read it all for yourself more detailed, then check out the link down below. It's gonna be called patch 9.2 notes or something, and just go down to Kayn. Kayn now can now recall before his shapes. Shadow Step expires as long as he isn't still in terrain. Okay, feels more smooth. The ulti is getting more range for Shadow Assassin Kayn. And then we have a few bug fixes for Kayn. So overall buff for Kayn. Kayn is a really good jungler. I rated him between top 5 and top 10 junglers. And he's probably closer to top 5 now than top 10. Because of these buffs. So really nice buff for Kayn. I didn't think he needed them, but I guess Kayn players will gladly take it. And I don't think Kayn will be a ban where we pick, but keep in mind that you might face a few more Kayn players, and that he might get his form early into the game, and if they're going blue Kayn, they will have more range on you, so you have to keep those things in mind. Other than that, fair enough. Nico, W clone, haste duration increase, the clone travel in target direction rather than pathing to target location. Ulti no longer slows, but Nico lands faster after jumping. So the clone haste duration has been increased from 2 to 3 seconds. Stealth duration is still the same, half a second. And Nico's clone is now gonna travel in the target's direction until it runs into terrain rather than pathing to the target location. Okay. And then it was a bug fix. Works on third, okay. Now the ulti, it no longer slows, but the jump time has been cut by 0.15 seconds. Don't know how smooth this will feel for Nico. I have seen Nico support being played, and I don't think Nico support is viable at all. I've been told that she's just fine for mid lane. And for jungle, I think it's kind of 50-50. I think it more depends on the player and the overall team matchup than Nico herself. But for mid lane, she's still strong. Support, please don't play her. Jungle, I am not really sure yet. I am not sure how worth this trade-off is of the 40% slow being removed for then a 0.15 second jump time cut. I don't know if this is worth trade-off or not, but you can maybe test it out in practice tool and see for yourself if you can feel any difference. Yeah. Ornn health and armor increased. This is basically a straight up buff to Ornn's laning phase. Ornn have been fairly weak after his changes recently. I think it was in patch 9.1. And he's basically getting straight up buffed in the early game for his laning phase, which seems fine since he is overall fairly weak. And yeah, fair buff, nothing to say. Ornn is still kind of weak. I think that you need to give him more damage or better like trade-off situations than giving him straight up tankiness. Because essentially what this is gonna do is the fact that you're just gonna be even tankier, like boxing pillow. Like you can take more hits, but you can't really hit back anyway. So it's kind of pointless, but it just like buffs your laning phase and makes sure that you are not taking as much damage in the early game. But you still, in my opinion, can't really trade back. I have played a few Ornn games and he doesn't feel as good as the previous Ornn because he no longer has the W shield. But maybe next patch they will give him some more trade-off abilities, some more damage, some high base damage, something. Because that's what, in my opinion, I think Ornn is needing. But if you need a tank, Ornn can still be just fine. His late game is good. His team fighting potential is especially the reason why you pick him. So if you need that, then Ornn is still a good pick, no matter what elo. Rakan, armor decreased, W dash speed decreased, but activates faster upon reaching the destination. So first up, his base armor is being lowered. This basically means that AD carries are gonna deal more damage and can trade easier with Rakan. So that's fair. The dash speed beforehand was 2050 plus 30% of Rakan's movement speed, so now being 1400 plus 45 plus 80 with an unupgraded upgraded. Okay, so it's with boots. Okay, so 45 with no upgraded boots, so tier 1 boots, and 80 bonus movement speed or dash speed with the tier 2 boots. Still an overall nerf for Rakan in terms of dash speed, so keep in mind that you're not able to engage as fast, but the overall like smoothness should be increased a tiny bit since the knock-up is gonna be more instant. So yeah, as you can see here, the effect delay is gonna be cut down by 0.15, so the knock-up is gonna be even faster, so it feels more smooth. It feels slower but smoother essentially. Max range cast hits slightly later than before. Short cast hits faster. Okay, so keep in mind if you want to do engage from far away, it's gonna be slightly later and slower. If it's like instant, then it's faster, and yeah, also even smoother. And then there's a bug for Rakan ulti. Giving some not affect Rakan's basic attack. Okay. Then we have Shyvana. Passive bonus damage to dragons increased, E-mark damage increase. So she's essentially just gonna be better at taking drakes by herself. I think she was just fine at doing that before, but now she's just even better at it. And then her max target health, mark damage from E is basically getting a 0.75 increase. Problem with Shyvana is that she's a power farmer and she doesn't really fit in the current meta with Skullcrab. She doesn't really gank too much, so if your team's falling behind, you are essentially just doomed because you can't do anything about it. You are basically saying, hey, I need to scale, I need my items. I have played one game of Shyvana on a Gold Elo Smurf account because some of you guys wanted me to play that on stream. So if you want to see that, I have a Shyvana game for you that you can check out. I won that game. I played fairly passive, but I still managed to pick up quite a few kills and ended up carrying the game. Shyvana is still in a weak spot, and I don't think that you should pick Shyvana jungle. I have seen AP Shyvana top lane, but it's essentially, in my opinion, kind of troll. So both Shyvana jungle and Shyvana top lane is still, in my opinion, not viable and still weak compared to the current top lane and jungle meta. So please don't pick her, pick something else, because it's essentially going to be more worth for you than picking this passive, just power farming jungler, who is also indirectly getting nerfed, and I'll talk about that later on once we get further down the patch rundowns. But yeah, please don't play Shyvana. These buffs are basically not going to do anything. Allies in combat with champions can no longer jump into ulti. So this is only, I think it's mainly going to affect Tahm support. And we don't really see Tahm support too much in SoloQ, at least I haven't. But yeah, a straight up nerf. Allies in combat with champions can't really use the ulti of Tahm to escape or engage or reposition or anything. So keep that in mind. Urgot, armor decrease, Q cost increase, W cooldown increased early. So Urgot has been a really strong top laner for a while now. He has been really good for, I think, 2 or 3 patches now. He's been like top tier. He's been top 3 top laners, maybe top 5 in some scenarios. And his base armor is basically getting lowered by 3, which basically means that AD top laners are gonna trade off easily against him. Wait a sec. I thought I was about to sneeze, never mind. And the Q cost has been increased from 50 mana to 60 mana. Again, hitting his mana sustain in lane. And then his W cooldown is getting a 4-second increase early on, but is essentially later on gonna be the same as it was before then. So this basically means that you can easily trade against Urgot, especially if you're an AD champion, since both his base armor is being lowered, but also his W has a longer cooldown. So it basically gives you a longer time window than beforehand to either trade against him or essentially solo kill him if that's what you're going for. Definitely a well-deserved nerf for Urgot. I'm happy to see this nerf as well. So move on to the next one. Volibear. E bonus damage versus dashing airborne target changed to max health. R ratio increased on cast. Lightning happens faster. Lightning now bounces instantly. Okay, so his E beforehand dealt flat damage plus 0.3 AP scaling. It's now 8% of target's max health. This is good against tanks, but it's maybe gonna be weaker against squishy champions, mainly AD carries and stuff. And then his ulti is getting a 10% AP increase, and the lightning bolt is getting a 0.15 cut, and it's now gonna be instant instead of like the delay from bouncing. Like it was like choo 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 like through the minions. So it's basically like hitting one after the other. Now it's like more like instant. I haven't seen Volibear too much. I think I've seen him jungle mainly, like 2 or 3 games. But that's about it. But this seemed to be okay against some tanky heavy team comps. Maybe if the enemy team has a tank top, tank jungle and or tank support. So if they have 2 or 3 tanks, I think Volibear might be viable. The ulti change with the AP ratio increase is not gonna do anything because you don't really build AP on Volley. You're essentially just building tank. But it's a nice buff to Volibear. If it does anything, like, I don't think so. Only against like the 2 or 3 tank team compositions that you might face in SoloQ on the enemy team. But other than that, I don't think Volibear is viable for New lanes actually. I've seen him being playing top, jungle, and support, but I don't think it's gonna buff anything specifically like that actually makes it viable again or potentially strong. I'd say that of those 3 lanes, Volibear jungle is probably the best one, but yeah, only against like heavy tank team comps it might be good, but yeah. Yorick. The Maiden now follows Yorick when he leaves lane. Maiden health scales better with game time. Grave spawn faster late. Mistwalkers and the Maiden no longer deals less damage when far away from Yorick. So they basically removed the fact that Mistwalkers, like the small creepy thing, and Maiden, the ulti, no longer deals decreased damage when they're far away from Yorick, which means that there is straight up a buff for Yorick. Now he doesn't have to like stay within his small minions and his ulti. He can stay far away and deal the same damage output. Mistwalkers now gives less gold. The bug fix with E. Okay, here. So Maiden beforehand had a high base HP, plus having a lower HP ratio of Yorick. Now it has a lower base health, but a higher scaling of Yorick's health. Luckily for us, Yorick players, if there are any out there anymore, I never fucking see this champion, but hey, maybe some of you guys still play him. Yorick naturally builds more HP, so this is essentially gonna be a buff. Probably not level 6, maybe, I actually don't know. But definitely level 11 and level 16, it's gonna be good. And now that you can control your ulti, you can essentially set up better split pushes. Since you can control Maiden, Maiden's just, yeah, controllable now. Instead of Maiden just like pushing a lane and keep on pushing until it basically dies. That was kind of like what the old thing was with Yorick, so you always had to stay with Maiden to deal the bonus damage, or not the bonus damage, but like more damage with Maiden, and yeah, basically push with Maiden and the small minions. Now he can control it more and have more flexible plays and do more strategical plays, and having overall higher pressure. If it's gonna do anything, I don't think so. I don't see Yorick in SoloQ anymore, so I don't think it's gonna do anything buffing him like this, but hey, maybe. Syra, mana regen decreased. She's basically losing 2.335 mana regen per 5 seconds. Reason being, AP ratios, heavy AP ratio supports are really strong at the moment, since, yeah, both squishy supports and AD carries don't really have MR or MR growth or builds MR in early game, and that basically means that they're touching Syra's mana regen and mana sustain. But Syra is still gonna be a good pick for SoloQ, especially against squishy lanes, or poke lanes even. Yeah, with poke lanes. Yeah, that's about it. Fair enough. Evelyn. Quality of life changes and fixes. So they basically just did some bug fixes and slight smooth improvements for her. The most important of these are basically the fact that you can use ulti while buffing your E, so you can E ulti more smoothly. So that's probably the biggest buff. And the other ones are just some bug fixes. Then we have Klett. Jousting through minions is no longer likely to stack them directly on top of each other. Okay. That is actually being a somewhat viable pick for top lane, but only in some matchups. I guess this is a nice, like, small buff for him. Then we have minimap targeting. Now you don't accidentally use your ulti by clicking the minimap down here or down here, depending on where you have it. That was basically all the champions. Now we're going to items. So, Oblivion Orb, cost increased, ability power decreased. They cost 100 gold more, gives 20 AP less. Basically, it's a less gold efficient item now, but it builds into Morello. So Morello is essentially going to be 100 gold less, which is this. So Oblivion Orb itself is going to be weaker, Whereas Morello is gonna be the same, except that you lose 10 AP. But you don't really build Morello for the AP. It's more like for the grievous wounds against sustain, against healers and stuff that you buy it. So I think this is a fair nerf. I don't think it's gonna do too much. I'll still build Morello in the scenarios where I used to build Morello. And yeah, that's about it. Sunfire Cape decreased in gold by 150. Yeah. Essentially the fact that, yeah, tanks get a cheaper item. If you use Sunfire Cape, then it's a straight up buff, but it's not all tanks who buy Sunfire Cape, so it's only a buff for some tank champions. But yeah, that was essentially only the items. Okay. Runes. Overheal is essentially gonna do ally heal 4200, 300, self heal 4200 from 40. Okay, so you're essentially gonna heal more for yourself, but the ally heal is getting nerfed. And then the shield decay is decaying after 6 seconds by 2.5% of the max shield value for each second. Okay. So it's essentially gonna decay after 6 seconds instead of just instantly falling off after 6 seconds. So the shield itself is gonna be there for longer. The self heal is gonna be better, but the ally heal is gonna be lower. Then you have Legend Bloodline. Lifesteal per stack is getting reduced by 0.2. Max stacks increased from 10 to 20. Max lifesteal increased up to 12 from 8. So this is a buff and a nerf. It basically depends on the champion. If you are a constant high DPS champion who keeps on fighting, it's a buff. If you only do small trades, or you lifesteal off a few auto attacks, or just do it for a small better sustain, then it's a nerf. So the more you fight, the better it becomes, and it even becomes stronger than before. If you fight less or only go for a few auto attacks, it's essentially gonna be weaker. So it basically depends on the matchup and the champion that you're playing, if it's a buff or not. Then we have Cut Down. Bonus damage scales based on percent max health difference rather than flat max health difference. Maximum bonus damage decreased. So before it dealt 4 to 12% of enemy target who has 150 to 2000 more health than you yourself. So now dealing 4 to 10, who has 10 to 100% more max health than you have. So now it basically does scales of max HP instead of flat HP, which can most likely gonna be a buff, but the fact that you are dealing less damage is basically making an overall nerf. But if it's gonna be felt, I actually don't know. I don't play with Cut Down myself too much. I know that it's mainly AD carries who against tanks are gonna do that, but yeah. Absolute Focus. Adaptive stats decreased from 3 AD to 24 AD, and 5 AP to 40 AP. Now it's 1.8 AD to 18, and 3 AP to 30 AP. Straight up nerf. I think the reason being is that Absolute Focus was a really preferable rune, especially secondary, or pretty much all like sorcery users used to go Absolute Focus, but it was only slightly better than some of the other sorcery runes that you can choose from. So I think that you're basically gonna replace Absolute Focus with something else. And it all depends on the champion and your matchup now. I don't think Absolute Focus is too good anymore, since the cut is gonna be felt. Even though we're talking about so small numbers, it's still gonna be felt. And the difference between Absolute Focus and some of the other like runes that you could choose from in sorcery, like the difference were so small before, but Absolute Focus was just like a tiny bit better than the other ones. So I think that you're simply gonna swap to other runes in Absolute Focus in the sorcery tree now. So yeah, maybe go and look up like different statistic websites, ob.gg or u.gg or whatever you use, and see what pro players and what your champion uses, if you used either Absolute Focus in your primary tree or secondary tree for a champion. Maybe go and look that up, what people, like what is trending now. If it's still absolute focus or if it's getting replaced by something else. Then we have rune stats. Adaptive damage decreased, armor and magic resist increased. So you're losing 1 AD, you're gaining 1 armor and 2 magic resist. Reason being that we probably play more AD and AP champions, like damage champions in SoloQ, than tanks. So tanks getting buffed and damage dealers getting slightly nerfed, but it's barely gonna be felt, I think. You're still gonna do the exact same runes pretty much. So nothing too crazy here. Summoner spells, ignite damage and cooldown decreased. So the damage has been lowered by 10 in early game and 95 in late game, and lowered by 30 seconds. So it basically means that you have ignite up more often for trading, but the damage is gonna be lower, so you'll have to deal more damage to finish off targets now. But you will have ignite up more. I think it's overall a nerf. Since most champions don't really just go in and use ignite whenever it's off cooldown. It's more like if they're able to kill someone with ignite, they're gonna go for it. But it's not like as soon as ignite comes off cooldown, you're going for an all-in and then you just go for it. You more like set it up for a kill, and then when you have ignite, you basically have the bonus damage to finish them off. So I think this is actually a nerf. But it basically depends on the champion and the matchup, I think. But for most matchups, I think it's a nerf. Game pacing, Hand of Baron. Baron buff is weaker in the early game. So scaling accelerates over time and increments every second. Attack damage is 12 to 48 at 20 to 40 minutes, 26 at 30 minutes. AP is 20 to 80 at 20 to 40 minutes, 43 at 30 minutes. Minion damage reduction versus champions are now 50 to 70 from 70. That basically makes Baron buff less broken. Beforehand, the current meta for like ending games is pretty much stall the game for 20 minutes, set up Baron. Whoever gets Baron gets to push and open up the enemy base, and then you need like one good team fight or one good pressure play, and then you end the game. So now we have some more counterplay to Baron. You can basically survive enemy getting Baron, which is nice. But just keep in mind that just if you get Baron, that you're not gonna get an automatic like free win and ending the game off it anymore. But getting Baron is still worth it. You will still have a lot of pressure with it. So if you can set up a Baron play, then I'll definitely recommend doing it. But it's not like the last game-changing factor of the game. It doesn't mean that if you get a 20-minute Baron that you can end within like 25 minutes. No, it's gonna be like 30-minute games from now on, I think. Maybe even more. Maybe 40. Like 40 is where 40 minutes into the game is basically where the Baron buff is essentially as strong as it is before. 30 minutes, like the middle part, is slightly weaker, and 20 minutes it's where it's like barely much weaker than it is right now. But yeah. Inhibitor and Nexus turrets getting 70 armor and magic resist at all time instead of scaling. Okay. Again, more counterplay. You're basically stalling the game. The games gets longer and longer now. Beforehand, we tend to see like the 20 to 25 minute Baron play and then ending within 5 minutes. Whereas now it's basically gonna stall out. The Baron buff is weaker. The Inhibitor and Nexus turrets are stronger, so you can't end as fast anymore. So the game pace is basically being lower and the game length is being longer. So that means that hybrid carry late game champions have a little bit more time to scale, and early game champions will most likely will be dragged into late game a bit longer than as of right now. Then we have the jungle changes, and I've been asked this question so many times on stream, so here it is. People have been telling that you should pick level 2 gankers and basically do red to gank and then clear your jungle and you basically win the game. You can do that. I definitely recommend it. It is viable, I'm not saying that. But it's mainly hitting power farmers in some way. It's essentially rewarding macro players or jungle mains who know like most optimal pathing, how to counter jungle, when to gank, like how to be time efficient. They're basically gonna be buffed. So now it's more about who is the better macro player. Than beforehand it was kind of like whatever, because you could always trade something. So if you lost your blue, well, you traded enemy blue, or you traded skull, or you traded enemy like enemy side jungle or something, and did the vertical jungling pathing and stuff. Whereas now it's more rewarding to counter jungle, and it's essentially just who are better at macroing and being time efficient in terms of pathing, and who are basically wasting time on ganks that are not being made, who are making more cross map plays, and who are slower at like clearing. So jungle is more skilled. It is overall nerfed, and I hate it. I think that this was a big nerf to junglers, especially in mid and late game. But it basically rewards the better player if the better player actually like utilizes this. But it is a straight up overall nerf, so keep that in mind. Of course this sucks, not gonna lie, I am a jungle main after all, and this is gonna affect junglers, and you will feel this. But yeah, you can pick the level 2 gankers and do that, but you can also just be better at clearing, being more time efficient. Power farmers on the other hand seems to be struggling here, because they will get less XP. And especially if they're late game champions and you're playing an early game champion, and if you invade them, it's essentially more rewarding to play aggro and like counter jungle, like invade, stuff like that. Which is nice. If you can utilize it, it's a buff. If you can't utilize it, well, it's gonna fucking suck, because this will be felt for junglers if they don't utilize this and do this kind of plays. But yeah, if you want to go into detail, again, I am going to link it down below. It's just overall the fact that you're getting less XP now than beforehand, but it is rewarding the better player. The better jungler wins is essentially like kind of coming back, but not really, because it's essentially going to give junglers less impact and less carry potential. But the individual like jungle matchup is more skilled now. It is going to reward the better player essentially. Then we have challenging smite. So I was asked again on stream a couple of times, like, what do you think about challenging smite? What it's gonna do? And for colleagues, I have made a video about when to take blue and when to take red smite. I am gonna link it down below if you wanna see it. It's a video, but I also have a Google Sheets overview that you can see. And what I am doing, and this is from a assassin jungler's point of view, for at least colleagues, I am taking blue smite against tank junglers, and I'm taking red smite against assassin junglers or bruiser junglers. And this essentially gonna be a straight up nerf for basically whenever you gank you wanna duel someone. But also for me personally, it's for the assassin and bruiser junglers that I'll face, but it is the exact same thing for them. Again, the individual jungle matchup will be the same, will be rewarding the better player, but junglers are overall just weaker against laners because they have less XP and less damage output and less damage reduction now. But yeah, this is probably like one of the biggest things of this entire patch. And then we have a few skins and bug fixes. So let me quickly run through fairly fast what's happening. Silas coming out. Probably a banner pick. Haven't seen the numbers, but the kit itself seems kind of oppressive. So if the numbers are good enough, it's going to be broken. If the numbers suck, it is kind of going to be a troll champion that's going to be useless. Aatrox was a strong meta mid laner and top laner. Who was top tier, got nerfed. He is still going to be viable. He's just less oppressive now. Aurelion Sol is going to be better against melee champions. Brand is still gonna be okay for the support. Casio will have less W, time and damage output. Galio, who's #1 mid laner, got nerfed. Finally, thank God. Aurelia has more counterplay now, and is overall weaker throughout most parts of the game. Jarvan is irrelevant. Jax is weaker early game, but is still the same late game. Kassadin is weaker against AD champs and basic attacks. Kayn will get his form a bit faster and feels a bit more smooth to play. Blue Kayn also got buffed, so be careful of that. Nico, yeah, I actually don't know about the Nico changes. Ornn is a better boxing, like a stronger boxing pillow, but is still not able to trade off. Rakan overall engage lowered or less suppressive, so you have more time. Shyvana, irrelevant. Tomkins, irrelevant. Urgot, top tier top laner, finally got nerfed. Still probably gonna be top tier, but you can trade against him easier and you have a bigger time window of trading, killing, and ganking. Volibear chain seems nice against tanks, but other than that, it's irrelevant. Yorick, irrelevant, we never see him. Syra was kind of oppressive as an AP support who's really strong, got nerfed. She's still strong in lane. Evelynn feels more smooth. Kled feels more smooth. The difference, yeah, like everything else I pretty much went through. So yeah, this was basically my patch rundown 9.2. If you have any questions regarding this, if you want me to go further in depth regarding any subject, just comment down below. I am probably gonna respond on every single comment fairly fast on this video within the next 2 days. So it is 24th that I'm uploading this, so up until 26th of January I'll be responding fairly fast to comments. So if you have anything, feel free to comment. And yeah, let me know if you found this informative and you like my point of view. And I'm probably gonna keep on doing this as long as some people enjoy it. I know that it's not everyone who enjoyed this, but for me it's kind of fun, because I am indeed anyways reading patch notes, and I might as well just do like my opinion on it and share like my opinion with you guys and hear you guys out as well. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, broskis. This was my patch 9.2 rundown, and I will see you in my next YouTube video.